This is the third and final video for the Function H section of the Functions module. In this video we're looking at reflections and to look at vertical reflections to start with. So when the variable x of a function is replaced with its corresponding opposite value negative x, the graph of the resulting function, f negative x, is the original function reflected vertically. Okay, so the graph is reflected across the x-axis. Now to get that function, all you're doing is replacing the x with a negative x. So if I have f of x equals x cubed, then the vertical reflection would be f of negative x, which is negative x or cubed, which simply becomes negative x cubed. Okay, so you're just replacing the x with a negative x. So let's look at an example. If I have the square root function, so y equals x to the power of 0.5, y equals square root of x. Have a look at that graph there. If I do that function again, but this time replace the x with a negative x, I get y equals, now I'm going to put that negative x in brackets. So it's definitely the negative x. I've just replaced the x with the negative x, and I'm putting that to the power of 0.5. And you can see that's reflected on the y-axis. Okay. Now let's look at a horizontal reflection. Now the graph of a negative function, negative f of x, is the original function f of x reflected across the x-axis. So it's a horizontal reflection. So what I mean by that, if I had y equals x squared, or f of x equals x squared, then to do the horizontal reflection it'd just be negative f of x, or negative x squared. Okay? If I had f of x equals x to the 4, then negative f of x would just be negative x to the 4. So let's look at some examples. Let's look at the parabola to start with. Y equals x squared. So there's my basic parabola. The reflection on the x-axis will be y equals negative x squared. And that's it there. Okay? So there's a summary. On the left-hand side you can see a reflection on the y-axis, and on the right hand side you can see a reflection on the x-axis. So let's look at some examples by putting this all together. If I have y equals negative 2 bracket x minus 1 all squared plus 3, that negative 2 is telling me that I have a reflection. Okay, and it's a negative 2 in the front, so all I'm doing here is I'm going to reflect it on the x-axis. Now it's a squared function, so we're looking at a parabola. So what that means is my parabola, which would normally be happy, is going to be sad. Here I have x minus 1, so it's going to move to the right 1, and then I have a plus 3 at the end, which means it's going to move up 3. So let's put that together. My turning point for my parabola would normally be here, and it'd normally be happy. Okay, but we've got turning point there, and it's going to be sad. Let's see where it moves. It moves 1 to the right and 3 up. So it's moving to there. Okay, and we can find our y-intercept, which we should because it's a critical point. So y-intercept is when x equals 0. So we've got y equals negative 2, 0 minus 1 all squared plus 3. Negative 1 all squared's 1, so negative 2 plus 3, which is 1. So my y-intercept is happening at 0, 1. Now, I also already know that I have a point at 2, 1 because it's a symmetrical parabola. So that's it there. Y equals negative 2, x minus 1 all squared plus 3. Next, f of x equals 6 over x minus 2. Stop the video, have a go yourself. Okay, we've got something moving here because we've got an x minus 2 and it's a horizontal movement. It's a minus 2, so it's going to move to the right 2. We also know that there's a division happening, so it's a hyperbola. Hyperbolas have asymptotes. X minus 2 can't equal 0 because we get a 0 happening on the bottom, can't divide by 0, so x can't equal 2. So that's one asymptote. Swapping these two around, I get x minus 2 equals 6 over f of x. Because the f of x is on the bottom, f of x can't equal 0. So that's another asymptote. The other thing I should work out is my y-intercept, or my fx-intercept, which is at f of 0. That's going to be 6 over 0 minus 2. 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3. So let's try and put all this information on my graph. X equals 2 is an asymptote. So I put that in. F of x equals 0 is an asymptote. So I put that in. Okay, 0, negative 3 is my y-intercept. Now there's no negative out the front, so I know it's a normal hyperbola, and my normal hyperbola just looks like that, but this one's translated. So if I put in that graph, it looks like that. Label it, f of x equals 6 over x minus 2. What now? Well, you need to practice. This is a tricky module, but remember the translations are all the same. Okay, so have a look at function H1 and do that. Again, hopefully you're learning what all the graphs look like and which way they go. Doesn't matter what the graph is, the translations occur for each graph.